Welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club's Fireside Chat. Our purpose is to engage the power of diverse worldwide talent to accelerate the global evolution to Industry 4.0. We accomplish this by hosting and supporting respectful, thoughtful, and interdisciplinary open conversations and creating quality content on a wide ranging Industry 4.0 topics to expand the reach of our community. My name is Mike Unger, and I'm an Industry 4.0 co founder. We're glad you've decided to join us for today's Fireside Chat with our fellow Industry 4.0 Club co founders, Mike Yost and Martin Cloak. We're going to talk today about the ChatGPT effect, how AI is reshaping the future of manufacturing. As we get started, for those listening on LinkedIn Live, if you have a question or comment for us, please share it in the comment section and we'll try to answer it during our time together today. So we're in the early days of ChatGPT and AI. Martin, can you set the stage for us a little bit, please?
Absolutely. And first off, I'm super excited to talk about this. I think I've seen a bunch of trends come through, and often with trends in our space in particular, it's something that I was already excited about before it becoming a trend. And I think with this in particular, I didn't see it coming this quickly, and I'm kind of blown away by the potential of this kind of technology. And I think some people have described it like something similar to the beginning of the internet, and it's exciting, and I'd love to share some of this excitement and what we've learned here. In some ways, the title of this, how it's reshaping the future of manufacturing, it sounds like this is something that is maybe a bit presumptuous because manufacturing doesn't typically move that quickly. But I would say if you were to go into manufacturing plants today, everybody's playing with this thing. So I would say that the title of it is accurate. People are playing with this now, and if you're not playing with it or even trying to understand it, you're in a bit of a risky position. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about today is we'll get into that here. But yeah, I'm excited to share this with our audience and get your guys' perspective in particular. So first off, what is ChatGPT? And the sarcastic answer is super popular. So this is, I saw this chart online that's been posted and reposted showing how long it took to get to 1 million users. I believe it took 5 days for ChatGPT to get to 1 million users. And that compares to Instagram, which was like 90 days. And it's just like, and I would say with Instagram, the utility of it was pretty obvious. With ChatGPT, the first ways people are using it is to write haikus and do their kids' homework. And so it's almost exciting, despite the fact that the applications aren't particularly practical. So first off, so maybe just get into some basics here. I'm not going to go deep, and throughout this, I'll highlight that there's a chance that I got some help from ChatGPT to create some of this content. I think that goes without saying for everybody. I don't know, Mike, if you guys did some cheating in the last 24 hours.
I have not done my children's homework. No, I have not.
No? Okay. All right. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-Training Transformer. It's basically this model that is really good at understanding and generating human-like text. So, simplistically, I think we've all seen versions of it in the past where you're typing something and the next word appears. Well, imagine if you have enough context and knowledge of the English language to be able to not only write the next word, but to write the next 30 words, because you understand what the conversation is about. So conceptually, if you can understand and wrap your head around this concept of software being able to predict what the next word is, GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 is basically this model that is able to go way deeper. And go ahead,
Martin.
Mike.
I was just going to say, it's interesting when you say that. I thought that my wife was the only one that could do that for me.
Yeah.
Oh, finish your words.
Finish your sentences.
What's that line? You complete my. I'm just envisioning
I'm
envisioning like a Valentine's Day card about that you complete my thoughts.
I was just thinking about what you're saying. It's like, wait a minute, that already happens in a lot of relationships. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and you know what?
It's a good point though about being more human-like, right? And that's part of the allure here, right? Is that this is getting much less technical and much more human-like.
Well, I think sort of going to the what it is. So one of the most exciting things about ChatGPT is it's context aware. So the being able to finish somebody's sentence, you have to have history with them. So now ChatGPT has this base level of history because it's been trained by content from the internet. And exactly what content, we're not sure, but it's probably stuff like on Wikipedia or conversations on Twitter. So I guess that's a double-edged sword. But it's context aware. So to be able to finish somebody's sentence, you need to do more than simply understand the English language. You need to understand the person. So one of the key things with ChatGPT is it's context aware, and that window of context can be quite large. If it's general knowledge, it is massive. It's been trained on this like massive, basically like a massive amount of content. Now the interesting thing is, for the kinds of applications that we are seeing today, what's important is to have the specific context of the user. And that's something it wasn't trained based on how Mike, communicates with his wife. But Mike, if you were to upload and train a model based on all of your text correspondence, I don't know if you guys wrote each other letters at all, but that would be the kind of data set that would help the model predict, what you would say next.
Yeah, just one story that I had heard about that, and I haven't done any of this, and I'm probably the least prepared to advise somebody of what this is and isn't. But I heard about a tech reporter that took her diaries from the time she was like 15 through 18 or something, and fed them into one of the previous versions of ChatGPT, and then interacted with it, asked questions of the bot that was trained, and she said it basically gave answers she felt that were in line with what the way she would have answered things as a 17-year-old person.
Well, and in fact, we have one of our listeners who already has commented about that. His comment was, Alex says, you can, this is something that I guess a lot of us realize, but you can already feed it examples of your own writing, just as you explained, Mike, and it'll give you a response in your voice. So I think that's really cool, isn't it? I think about that, it's kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah, I guess like the little voice in your head can now like turn into an actual active text conversation. But yeah, it's so the applications are pretty wild, and I think in some ways the potential is so broad it's hard for us to wrap our heads around. But just sort of finish off the basics. So it's context aware, it has history, the history that's in the model. And the model is currently a closed system. So, you can't just throw in your training data and have it train now. That's something that may happen in the near term, but assume that this is a closed system. But in the beginning of your chat with it, you can input like, this is about me. And this is one of the neat things of it, that you can actually create like a config file or a way to add some context that will frame the conversation. All right, so first thing, context aware. Second, human-like. I think unlike other chatbots or things that we've interacted with, it is quite human-like, and this is because it's been trained off of human conversations as part of the content that's in there. And the third one, it's adaptable. So if you wanted to create content of a certain style, format, with expertise in a particular domain, it's able to do that. So these are all the things that make it exciting. So write me I'm a big fan of like, if you guys remember Jack Handy's humor from Saturday Night Live, like the deep thoughts. Like anytime I say write a paragraph about the future of manufacturing in a way that Jack Handy would write, and then it's like that's just my way of entertaining myself with it. But it is adaptable. So if you want to create a certain style, it's able to do that. So that's what it is. What it isn't flawless. If you've interacted with this system, it makes mistakes, and it makes, in some ways, it seems like boneheaded mistakes. And I think relying on it to do mission critical stuff, it's a risky proposition. Second, it's not unbiased, it's biased. So the kinds of content that are put in there, haven't been filtered. And a lot of the work that went into making sure that it was usable was to try to take out some of these biases, but it's not quite there yet. So that's something to be conscious of. And it's not a replacement for humans. And I think, there's and this is something that everybody's concerned with. And I started my career working as a mechanical designer, and I use CAD software, which in some ways it enabled me to be way faster than I was without using CAD software. But that still doesn't make it, like I had to make it a good design or bad design. So in some ways, in its current state, it's a tool, but to actually do something good. And if you think about, the difference between crappy music and good music, crappy art and good art, crappy food and good food, like that magic that makes something excellent, that last little 5% is something that, still humans are the only ones that can do. Maybe that will change, but, I think that excellence and that creativity and that stuff that, we are wired to do is something that these systems haven't been wired to do, because that's not what they've been trained on. So not a replacement for us, but still has implications with regards to workforce and all that, and we'll get into that shortly. So I hope I kind of covered the basics here, but and then there's tons of content out there. Just check it up, or you can even have a chat with ChatGPT to ask it to describe it. Yeah, ask it like, what are you all about?
I think one thing we should say here, for the sake of our viewers, is that for the sake of the club and our audience and what we try to do, this is a hot topic area with a lot of questions, more questions than answers at this point. So we're going to have a continued set of conversations around this topic, and invite others to ask questions now, get involved later. But this isn't to be we're not here with the answers as far as exactly what ChatGPT should be doing for you today or tomorrow.
No, I think the only thing is to say people are exploring, and I think that's the thing that we're sort of highlighting. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, I was going to. So if we start digging into some of the details, perhaps we should just move forward and get to some of the details. So, ChatGPT has a natural language processing capability to improve communication and collaboration. How can that be applied in manufacturing? So, what does it bring that perhaps we don't have today?
I think the potential in manufacturing is, on the surface, it's similar to the potential in other industries. I think one of the things that we do more of in manufacturing is we try to understand what's happening, and manufacturing plants are always a combination of process, machines, and people, and speaking to machines is easy. Like in some ways, right? Machines can only say two words. They say 0 and 1. Some of them say it really quickly, and if you can interpret the zeros and ones, you can figure out what the machine's telling you. We're not that simple. Not only do we communicate with a whole bunch of different words, how we feel is super important. You can't talk to us quickly, even though I try, and you can't talk to us all the time. So one of the first things is that there's all this knowledge and understanding in manufacturing that is kind of jammed up because of the fact it's harder to get this information to others. So I would say there's sort of two things that are exciting about the use of this technology in manufacturing. One is the ability to communicate and share information with people in all levels on the shop floor. So if you have useful information, share it. And it's, rather than giving somebody a PDF, like you start with a business and you get like a 30-page employment manual and say, oh my God, and who actually reads that, right? It's being able to consume content in an easy way. But in addition, the ability to listen, and I think that's kind of one of the things that I haven't heard as much of, but in addition to the ability to communicate, ChatGPT has the ability to listen and collect and summarize. So this chat, so I know we discussed at the end of this call, we're going to post a blog that summarizes the things we discussed. Normally, that would take, I guess, how long would it take to write a blog post, Mike? What's your gut feel?
Several hours.
Yeah, happy hours?
Yeah, probably not. No, definitely not.
Well, I guess it depends on whether or not it's like during happy hour, right? But so several hours. So yeah. So it's work, and then because of that, like we may or may not do it.
Right.
So at the end of this call, when we turn off the broadcast, we're going to figure out how to get this blog post out in 15 minutes. Right. And that really is, we're going to take the transcript from this call, summarize it, chop off the stuff where we're saying silly stuff, and post a blog post and a social media post within 15 minutes or 20 minutes. And I guess maybe we'll see if we actually do that. But I would say at least before tomorrow. That is incredible. But that's a combination of, and we're not even talking to ChatGPT. So this is ChatGPT's ability to listen to us and to be able to take this information and then communicate it in another form. So that's kind of stuff that's kind of mind-blowing, because that's been such a blocker for us and for organizations. Just think of, I was chatting with one of my friends who runs a manufacturing plant, and he was talking about how, one of the biggest challenges, especially with workforce retention, is when somebody retires, you lose a massive amount of knowledge. So somebody retires, they know how to run a station, and then they go and some new kid comes in trying to run the thing, and all that knowledge gets lost. And you want this person on the way out after retiring to write a 15-page manual describing how to run a particular machine? Not going to happen.
When I was thinking about, it's a great comment. When I was thinking about today, we have AI, and we can use AI for predictive maintenance, right? And it can tell us when a part's getting ready to fail. But if we take and add ChatGPT to that and take that knowledge about now, how do I replace that part? What do I need to look out for? That experienced person, that information can be in there. And so I need a less trained, a less experienced person now can go and do this work and even interact with ChatGPT. So the application could be quite tremendous for this issue about all of us baby boomers who are retiring. It could be tremendous for companies.
Absolutely. And I would say all the tech companies who are playing around with this stuff, they should all be, I mean, I'm sure they all are, from like the Tulip to the Maintenix and Polka and all that. All these firms are absolutely trying to figure this out, because this is just basically enabling these connections between people and their tooling, people and their software in an amazing way, and actually in a way that has the potential to get rid of a whole bunch of mundane work. Mind you, we don't often do things right the first time. So I think as we get into this conversation, there's some watch outs for us, because I think we're quick to get excited about stuff. And I always view Industry 4 as especially for those of us on LinkedIn, we get all excited about a concept and we run really fast and then slam into a wall. It's like that, the hype cycle. It's like the Gartner hype cycle, play it again and again. So I think this is like we're getting up to speed here, and hopefully we don't slam into the wall that hard, but reality is we probably will.
Yeah, I was going to actually probably ask more questions than provide answers here myself. But so you brought up some vendors and stuff that are looking at this, but like Microsoft obviously is a huge vendor that's made a huge investment in the ChatGPT. And I saw a video last week about how it's already plugged into the core applications and the value of that. But specifically, the video I saw was Power Apps, and how you can tell the interface to build you a Power App, and it will actually do all of the configuring that it needs to do to set it up. So that opens up the door, and there are people that are obviously already deploying those sorts of things. So I think you're right on the what's going to happen from the vendor side. How it's going to be presented and consumed, that I have no idea on.
I guess go ahead, Martin.
The example that no, you go first, then I'll go. Sorry.
No, I was going to say when I think about what you just described, Mike, in terms of Power Apps, at least in not just I retired from manufacturing 3 years ago, and 3 years ago we'd be looking for those individuals who liked to do that.
Yep.
And if a team didn't have somebody who liked to do it, we were stuck. Okay, we either went outside or we had to, we were hoping we'd find enough people that like to do those sorts of things that they would bring a lot of added value with that process to the environment. But now we don't need those folks. I mean, we still need those folks to help, but we can empower teams with this with this sort of approach and be much more productive and much more effective across the board.
Just so I think your example of Microsoft is perfect, and it highlights, I think, what the technology can do and what it can't do. And I sort of remember at my wedding, one of my buddies he created this technology to allow you to make sushi really quickly. So that one of the challenges with sushi is getting the rice down. So he made these little rice cartridges so you could basically make sushi on the fly. And we tested it out, and you basically had all the ingredients out there, and you could basically just cook the ingredients and make your little sushi rolls. And then what happened when we were playing with it, all the rolls tasted the same, because of course you're going to just randomly put in the ingredients, and then you taste it, it's like, okay, yeah, this one's like same as the last one. And so then what we realized is that in order to make it a great experience, he actually needed to tell us and give us the recipes. So there's this capability to make sushi on the fly, really cool. But he had to provide the recipes that actually made it a good experience. And I think similar to this technology, the tool, the capability itself allows you to do like a whole bunch of stuff really quickly. But those recipes, and then we described it earlier, the ability to sort of inject that context, that's basically the recipe. And if you can put in that recipe, that's the magic that will actually unlock the power of this. Those recipes and those things that create this customized experience, because this is more it's more capability than it is these customized experiences. But for us, we don't want to be treated like, we want to have an experience that's been optimized for us. And I think that's the next step, to create those customized experiences.
So is it safe? I'm sorry, Mike, I just want to jump in with a question.
Right.
So is it safe to assume at this point that the path that you were just going down, Martin, as far as retaining tribal knowledge, capturing the knowledge inside of a work area or a plant or a business, the human side is probably a closer reality for us than it is the actual connection to the machine. So you talk about context, right? And for decades, the biggest problem in talking to the machines is, to your point about the ones and zeros, converting that into the context that it means something we can understand. So is it safe to say, and maybe with the speed this is going, that time isn't an issue, right? They'll catch each other quickly. But it seems from where we're talking at this point, that point about the human interaction and listening and learning as an organization is probably a quicker path to value around this than connecting to the machines and having it go down that path. Is that accurate?
Maybe. Okay, so what you're alluding to is that, right now we're talking about applications that connect to text data, and it's designed for that. So these models were designed for text and really good at going through text. And the one thing with machine data, it is not text. It's not a story. If you were to read the story of machine data, it's boring and it's not structured in the right way. So if you want to get access, and there's pretty neat stuff that's happening right now. If folks want to look into embeddings, there's Andrew Ning had a neat video that describes an hour and a half describing how to actually index large data sets specific to text data sets. But if you want to use data with ChatGPT, you need to do two things. So the first one is you need to transform your data set into something that is closer to language than in its raw form. And once you translate that into this new form, so conceptually, if you can translate the data set into something that reads more like a story, conceptually, like how this actually happens practically is slightly different, then it's in a form that now ChatGPT can index, can search. And then based on that search, it can then answer questions based on that search, but that's probably not what they want as well. So in many cases, if you're doing data analysis, after you have the result, you may want to do some post-processing, maybe flip up a diagram or come up with a more deep insight. So right now, ChatGPT, if you're interacting with data, is not designed for it. But if you do pre-processing and post-processing, you can extract value from this. And I just, given the kind of value you can get from digging into data with this kind of technology, I wouldn't assume, Mike, that it's going to take, like, this stuff is happening now. I guess the key thing is, like, you have to listen to people and machines and plants to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
I kind of like to move our conversation to talk about, today we have a significant worker shortage general across the board, in particular in manufacturing. Do we think that ChatGPT is going to have a positive impact or a negative impact, or just what will its impact be on hiring and retaining of workers? Anybody care to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. So, I think the first thing with this technology is that it will create some risk to the workforce for those doing repetitive work. And I think that's something that is a consideration. Right now, the reality for many manufacturers is they're struggling to hire and to retain. And I think in order to hire and retain, the kinds of things that they're focusing on is offering experiences where upskilling is a focus, continuous learning. So these are kinds of things that people want to hear. So folks who are entering the workforce right now aren't going to sign on for 25 years. They're going to check it out for a year or two and see if they want to move on. There's a different mentality for folks that are joining. So, upskilling and continuous learning is what they want to experience. So if we can find a way to enable ChatGPT to give them that, and and also be in an environment where they're winning. I hate to use that term, but in manufacturing, winning means continuous improvement, and both personally and as an organization. And one of the potentials for this technology, especially if you're trying to continuously improve, is that it can enable sharing of best practice, which is kind of like the output of like sharing insights. But another component to that is being able to listen, right? So like both listening and feeding information back to the teams is something that's core to continuous improvement. And I think that's stuff that can both benefit the bottom line for manufacturers, but can also help to retain if organizations become more effective at listening and taking actions based off of good ideas. And a lot of those good ideas are now jammed up in the heads of smart folks standing in front of machines and where there's nobody around to listen. So I'm most interested in ChatGPT's ability to listen than its ability to speak.
Yeah, my 2 cents on that, Mike, would be, I think, from a long-term perspective, if this unlocks the ability to problem solve, right, and to get information more quickly, like Martin's alluding to, I think that it helps the industry. I think how we get from here to there and the time it takes and the risk and the fear and that sort of stuff is in the way. And I'm sure there are probably people that are more afraid to even let it listen at this point, as opposed to jumping in or knowing how to jump in. I'm sure it's going to cause some backlash until some of these things are figured out, but I would expect that in the longer term, if it's able to let people do what they're trying to do more effectively, then it's going to be good for the manufacturing base.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you. I think, one of the things that we used to talk about a lot in Michelin, anyway, in my experiences, is that if you can adapt both mentally in terms of learning new things and adapt physically, working at a different work post or a different location in this case, then you can be with a company or work for a long time. And it's interesting because ChatGPT is the center core issue is adaptive, right? So I think it still rings true that if as people we're adaptable, this can only enhance our ability to move, to retain and keep the workforce. If people aren't adaptable, this is almost an independent conversation. So I think this idea of adaptability is still a core competence, if you will, that anybody needs and that companies need to try to develop in their workforce in order to ensure that both they can marry the technology with the individuals and it can really bring value going forward.
What do you mean by adaptable?
I mean, being able to learn new things. So in other words, that I'm willing to change, that I'm able to change. The example I would share is when I started working in manufacturing, we had one computer in the plant. And our machines were controlled by Silomog, pneumatic controls. And so when I retired, obviously a very different environment. And so I had to learn new things. We had to learn how to run the machines differently. The maintenance guys had to learn new tools. So adaptable means learning new things. And of course, the place where you worked when I started with the company isn't the place where I finished. And in this case, if I'm on the shop floor working in a piece of equipment, a lot of folks weren't working on the same equipment they did when they were hired on. So it's this idea of adaptability, being able to change and learn new things, either both mentally and then also be able to change and work in different places. That's what I mean by adaptability.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, actually it's in my email signature, is from Eric Hoffer, probably, 60, 80 years ago, futurist. He said, in a time of drastic change, it's the learners who inherit the future. And the learned usually find themselves beautifully equipped to live in a world that no longer exists. All right, so I think that falls in line with what you're saying, Mike.
Well, and this tool, ChatGPT, really enhances our ability to adapt, and in fact, itself is adaptive. So it's quite amazing when you think about the marriage that's getting ready to start here.
I wonder. So, I think on the surface, people see ChatGPT and similar technologies as an opportunity to learn from an existing data set. And I think for those who've used it to help their kids do their homework and stuff like that, that is. But I think the real potential here is for us to use this kind of tool to help us learn from each other. And in order to learn from each other, there has to be that the flow of basically context in from people, insight flows out. Context in, and that dynamic is the one that is linked to continuous improvement, the ability to take in new information and continuously improve. One of the frameworks that I think fits really well to manufacturing and continuous improvement is and I think that fits in really nicely with this ChatGPT, is the concept of 5 whys. Do you guys know the 5 why concept?
Mm-hmm.
Just go ahead and explain it. Just go ahead and explain it so people that are listening.
Yeah.
Framework.
So just like, imagine you have a problem. If you ask 5 questions about the problem, you get deeper and deeper and deeper. At some point, you get to root cause, and then you can do a countermeasure to fix it. So really, I think right now, if you think about the way that we solve problems in manufacturing, that is the approach that we would take as an engineer, as a manager. You go to the source, during a Gemba walk, and you'd ask why. And I think I love the Gemba mantra. Go see, ask why, show respect. Like, that's the way you solve problems. So I think in some ways, with the obsession with data that we've had over the last, I don't know, well, it's been forever, but there's been an uptick.
Yeah.
Like when you see quotes like "data is the new oil," like oil doesn't solve problems, people solve problems, right? So I think if you were to map what's happening right now in manufacturing to the 5 whys, you basically have systems that are designed to ask the first why again and again and again, and then wonder why people aren't solving the problem, because you're not giving them that root cause. Right. And so to be able to create systems where you can actually interact and dig deeper and ask why, and help people get closer to understanding root cause, so right now that's only possible with humans and management by walking around, because of the fact that we haven't been able to interact with humans at scale and ask more sophisticated questions. So this idea that you can actually ask why with software is super exciting. And not only asking why, being able to use this to map the experience to then feed it back to people to give them a richer experience. Like, that is exciting. And and not only is that exciting, that's also motivating. And ultimately, if you want to drive improvement, you need to both inform and motivate. And if you only get one of those two things, it's not going to work.
That's really cool. No, there's no question that this could really revolutionize, if you will, how we work and how we approach problem solving. There's always a downside. There's always some risks. So I was curious if we could maybe talk a bit now about the risks involved with ChatGPT. Even though, we could the chatter and everybody's excited about what this can do. What are some of the risks that you guys see or that we see with ChatGPT?
I'll just say, and not specific to ChatGPT, so maybe ask Martin to talk more about that. But my experience has been that, like, what excited me the most about what you just talked about a second ago, Martin, was this point about having the systems listening, right, as opposed to building a system that asks somebody to input data and input data and input data, right? So I think to be able to draw from people as they work and as they contribute, I think is fantastic. But I've been in so many environments where like, we talk about sharing data, right, and across the supply chain, with partners, et cetera, and oftentimes departments won't share information with each other, right? So I think there's this concern around my data, how it's going to make me look. What are you going to find out when you hear what I have to say or see what I do, that sort of stuff. So I think there's a real danger at this point of not from the technology side perspective, but from the user side of saying, yeah, I have enough trust in, I guess all areas, the organization, the culture, the technology itself, to even share and input the data for the systems to drive any value.
And that's a big risk here. And in some ways, like, I don't know, did you guys think you grasped the risks that came along with the internet when the internet first came out?
No.
So I think this is a similar thing here where, we have to be cautious and getting it to write a top 10 list about Industry 4 as if it were written by Dave Letterman, like, low risk, but getting it to help you make decisions about supply chain and HR and legal documentation, like, that's there's a greater degree of lit risk. So I think the biggest stuff here, there's a couple of different ways we can look at this, but business risk without question. So everybody's playing with it, but there are security considerations. That you shouldn't be sharing proprietary data without understanding how to keep it secure. Liability issues. If you suddenly rely on ChatGPT to make decisions on your behalf, I think one of the things with just the nature of these language models, it's hard to understand how it made the decision. It's not transparent. Like that's kind of what's part of the magic. It's kind of what also makes it a bit frustrating. Like, why did it answer in a certain way? And it's not easy to audit these kinds of systems, and or even possible. So yeah, like liability, and then if you like, in some ways, I view this technology. I don't know if you ever seen those mini motorcycles. Just like really the miniature motorcycles.
Little ones that clowns ride, or
yeah, little ones, but just like super high powerful. I'm just thinking, I'm pretty sure maybe I saw it in America's Funniest Home Videos, but there's always like the video of some dad like jumping, like this kid says, "Oh, Dad, you can have a mini motorcycle," and then the dad's like, I'll show you how to do it," and he jumps on it and then like blasts through a fence. Yeah. So like I think like suddenly like everybody's been given these mini motorcycles, and they're like, I know how to do this stuff, and then they're going shooting off in the wrong direction, and they're not wearing a helmet. And I think there's like, we need to understand the power of what's here, because it's funny if you do that in an environment where like the consequence is not severe, but you don't want to. You don't want to jump on this mini motorcycle at the manufacturing plant and slam into a bunch of machines figuratively, So I think there is risk here, a huge amount of power that I don't even think we've, fully grasped. We were joking before the call here how, if ChatGPT is an elephant, we're looking at the toenail and going like, check the size of that toenail. Isn't that amazing? Without recognizing that this whole giant elephant is is attached to it. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I think proceeding with caution is important. The other risk here is on the people side, where there's a study that came out. If you guys look at HBS, they have a podcast. They're going to release the research soon, but it showed that there was anywhere between 30 and 80% productivity improvement for people using it in their daily jobs today. People who weren't trained, people who were doing their mundane tasks and supporting it. So that's like, they're saying that the steam engine got 20% efficiency boost. This is giving us 30 to 80% efficiency boost for mundane tasks day one with people who aren't trained. So just like that in itself should get everybody's attention. So this means that if people don't use it, there's going to be displacement. But I think this needs to be done in a way that's thoughtful, because coming along with the displacement, you could envision a way that this is used that just creates massive amount of that eighth waste, that waste of human capacity and capability. Like, if we want to create organizations that are highly capable, you can't suddenly do something that reduces people's desire to get better at finding and solving problems. So and that's kind of the expertise that we want to double down on. So it is like, we need to make sure if it does displace tasks, it displace mundane and repetitive tasks and not things that are core to running good businesses. But both there's businesses, there's people risk. This is a high-powered mini motorcycle, and like people are jumping on it without helmets. So it's exciting yet scary.
I think you mentioned the risks. I think about we talked earlier about context, and I think there's still a tremendous amount of learning we have to do with the tool, and we know that there's flaws in it, and I think we have to be smart. We have to listen. We have to think about what it's telling us, and say, does this make sense? One of the things, at least in my experience in manufacturing, there are subtle changes that occur on the shop floor. And I know with AI, we're getting more sophisticated in anticipating what those are with massive data sets. But we still don't. But that doesn't mean that something new can't happen that isn't a data set that causes us to go, is this really the answer? And so it still requires, today thought and some reflection on, hey, does this make sense? And I think that's still the risk, that people will take it carte blanche. They won't really think about it, what they're seeing. It can speed up that ability to get to that point of reflection. But that reflection, I think, in my mind, is still necessary, at least at this early stage of the tool.
So I guess a question that I have, not necessarily for either of you to answer, or a concern I have is, if I have a plant and I'm using this to listen and learn and stuff, do I actually have a large enough data set for it to learn from? Or do I need it to be, part of a larger, industry-wide, multiple companies, whatever it is, to have enough data for the thing to learn from it?
You absolutely, and I'm happy to show you some of the stuff I've played with here, but the key thing is the model itself has, just imagine if you read every single book about manufacturing, all of that data is in the model. All of any content that's out there that describes stuff that happens in manufacturing, stuff about companies, stuff about machines, stuff about, theory of constraints, it's all out there. So a lot of, and in some ways, what manufacturers are trying to do is very similar. There's kind of different flavors of different plants, but I would say that that's already there. And to be able to inject specific context that relates to challenges that individual manufacturers have, that generally can be summarized and made in a small enough way that you can get value from it from day one. So again, there's a difference between training a new model based on the data and taking the existing model that's highly capable and attaching context from an individual business. So right now, that's how to extract value from it. You connect context that describes your business situation, and this works across like beyond manufacturing. I think that's the thing. The applications, medicine and law is law is basically all language, right? So that's one that is probably already being influenced significantly. So this is not, I think in the past when these kinds of models have been discussed, we've been trying to think about how to leverage existing data sets to train a new model that can potentially do this. That's done. There's a model that's highly capable that can already do this. So you need some context. The missing piece is context, and that means that your own company has sufficient context to get value from this tech today.
So in that example, then if I'm contributing to a model that already exists, does that mean they own my data, or do I retain my data, or is that not going to get?
Well, I think that the thing is the context itself. You need to be wary of how they use the context, but you're not contributing to the model. The model, I would like GPT-4, ChatGPT. Right. It is closed.
It's his model.
But as you're interacting with OpenAI, and again, that somebody may chime in on the chat, but if you're interacting with OpenAI, if those interactions are likely data sets that they could use to train future models. So the current model is fixed. They are constantly trying to train new models. And one of the best data sets to train a new model is all of the text interactions that are happening right now. So that's the key thing here, where you need to make sure to understand what they're actually doing with your chats, what they're doing with the context that you're injecting into the conversations. Because to your point, you don't want them to train their model based off of confidential information. So that is a critical concern.
Thanks
and just to circle back on Mike's comment there, I when you were speaking, I was thinking of the data to insight hierarchy, right? Where you have like data, information, knowledge, wisdom, right? And then you draw the triangle one way, and then the value increases as you move up, right? Where the greatest value comes with wisdom. And ChatGPT is way better at data, way better at information. Knowledge, it's probably way better at knowledge. That wisdom piece, it's not very good at wisdom. And I think we often undersell the fact and the importance of wisdom overlaid on top of these massive data sets. And right now, if you relied on ChatGPT to make your decisions on a daily basis, it's going to make some boneheaded decisions. So I think that's the piece. That wisdom piece is probably similar to like that little magic last 5% that makes stuff, turns crappy art into good art and crappy music into good music. And that's something that it's to train it with data that describes our wisdom. It's like, that's something that's more of a challenge. It may get there, but it's not there today, clearly.
Super. Well, that's great. So thank you very much for the comments. I think we're getting close to wrapping up for the day. And again, as Mike mentioned earlier, this is our first of many conversations around ChatGPT. I'd like to throw it to both of you for some final thoughts before we wrap up. Mike, you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, I'm in way over my head here technologically, which is cool. I think the thing that I have gone in and played around with it and stuff, and I think to the point that Martin's talking about how it's trained on a data set. The question, after I poked around, generally speaking, for a while, I asked the question, why is Industry 4.0 not being adopted? And it came back and argued with me and said, well, it's not fair to say that it's not being adopted. And went on to give me this boilerplate BS vendor speak about how wonderful it all is. So it's going to have to take that wisdom that you're talking about, Mark, that experience. It's going to have to grow and it's going to have to learn, versus just, reading what's published in all of the books and saying, oh, well, that it works perfectly. So I'm excited about it. And I think that excited to get the conversation started here within the group. And I actually did learn a couple things here as well today. So,
Martin, before you go, Martin, I wanted just to share one comment that just came through, which is interesting about your comment about confidential information. Training is critical. It's an interesting final thought as well from Mike, who's listening. So that actually, it has happened. We had to be very cautious about this as we go forward. Martin, you want to share a final thought as well then?
Yeah, a couple of things just to sort of jump on, Mike's comments there. And I think one of the things that's exciting about this technology is how accessible it is to folks who may be decades away from playing with technology in a meaningful way. And like, I don't know how long Mike and you guys both have degrees that were technological at some point, you've been moved away. I think the cool thing is to almost have, there being value in having that distance and being able to interact with new technology in a way that's intuitive, where, not having the technical skills is not a barrier to begin to experiment, which is exciting. And I'm happy to share some things here, but I think there's almost this interesting opportunity for folks who've been around on the planet for a while to actually contribute meaningfully to the way that industry adopts this kind of stuff. I'm not saying that. Anyways, I was gonna give that a catchphrase, but I'll hold off on giving a catchphrase. But yeah, so I think like my sense with this is that potential for this technology to help organizations and improve efficiency, reduce errors, optimize resource utilization, increase motivation on the shop floor, on the top floor, and everybody in between is there. There are risks. Caution. You need to be cautious without question. Inaction is not an option. I think I was chatting with Jeff Winter recently and just going, and everybody's talking about this. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's playing with it. Like this, the fact that technology can increase the efficiency of regular day-to-day work by 30 to 80%, that cannot be ignored. But you have to go with caution, and once you start to go, be cautious of the fact that it's human nature to kind of go really quickly in the wrong direction, to slam into a wall here. So lots of opportunity. Everybody should be experimenting and figuring out how to use it best for their organization, but you have to do it. Wear a helmet and start in first gear before you zip off in your little mini motorcycle there, because it's there are risks. But yeah, overall I'm quite positive, and I'm excited about this particular group discussing this. And this is just the first chat with the industry for some of our founders, and Michael mentioned this at the end, but if you know of other people who could contribute to this conversation, we're going to be having these weekly, posted in the chat. We're going to be posting that blog, as I mentioned, ideally 15 minutes after this, but we'll see if it's actually 15 minutes. But we'd love to get thoughts from folks who are experimenting with it, and in particular people who are doing stuff in manufacturing plants. Like, I think you use the term vendor speak, Mike. So these models have been trained on vendor speak, and at some point, vendor speak is not necessarily describing the reality of what it will take to use all this stuff. So like, if anything, if we can use these conversations to fill the internet with less vendor speak, that would be a noble accomplishment for us. So yeah, excited about it. Love to hear from people in the chat, and love to hear who we should be speaking to as we start to do this series.
Thanks, Martin.
Yep.
So we're getting ready to wrap up. I just wanted to really thank Mike and Martin for this very insightful discussion. I hope that everybody in the audience has really enjoyed it as well. As Martin mentioned, we're going to talk about ChatGPT now for a few weeks as the start of a series we want to have on this topic. and really appreciate all the comments from Alex and Harold and Mike and Joanne and Sylvia. So appreciate you guys joining in and sharing your comments on LinkedIn as well. If you like this kind of conversation, again, as Martin said, please, if you want to be part of this in the future, let us know. We'd be happy to include you in our actual LinkedIn Live. We host conversations on links like this as part of our Industry 4.0 club quite often. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we focus on women in manufacturing, the future of manufacturing, fireside chat, and people, process, and culture. So we're really happy. And as also to advance our mission, we're now collaborating with conferences. So we're looking forward to very soon, we'll be doing an active, or be very active in an IME East, which will be happening in June in New York City. So we'll be talking about ChatGPT there as well. So please, if you'd like to be part of that or would like to join us there, we'd appreciate hearing from you as well. Please join our LinkedIn page and visit our website at www.industry4.0club.com. And Mike and Martin, thanks again. So I want to wish everybody a good rest of the day and a good rest of the week.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.